Hi, my name is Yacht. I've explored many countries and lived in Australia, France, Florida, and Hawaii. Follow me as I explore the world on my quest to find a special place that my family will one day call home. All right, so finally, the topic of Caldas da Rainha. Now, we'll go through the pros, the cons, and also my initial impressions, and just kind of the vibe of the city. So first, I'll start off with the pros, and and I'll weave in my initial impressions along the way. So the first pro is that it's a larger city. I mean, let's face it. All the other cities that I've visited on the Silver Coast, San Martino, Nazaré, Foz de Arelho, Celir de Porto, they're all smaller cities. And at any point, if you need something, special, you can only find at larger supermarkets or whatever, you have to drive into Caldas to kind of pick those items up. If you have, things that you need for home improvement, you have to drive into Caldas to pick those things up. Phone chargers, which I've had to do personally, which I'll talk on a little bit later, but things like that, you have to drive into Caldas. So it just makes sense from, logistics standpoint, just stay in the bigger city where you have access to everything. So, the fact that it's a bigger city also lends to some additional items that most people may be looking for when they're looking to relocate or check out Caldas as a potential place to stay or end up living. So in regards to it being a bigger city, I also touch on diversity. Were there a lot of diverse people there? Was it skin tones, people of color, and etc.? Yes, there were, point blank. And I think it just kind of lends itself the fact that it's being a bigger city. So it was within the first 5 minutes, I saw a lot of people of color, people from Indian descent, black people. I mean, it was great. It was great to see that, especially considering where I had, where I was previously living and staying in Foz and San Martino, Celir, and Nazaré. I rarely saw people of color, so it was great to see that. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. So, of course, with the diversity, it lends itself to, those folks bringing in their food from those different regions of the world. So, I mean, there were Indian restaurants galore there, which were really good. So, Indian restaurants. And I'll also touch on that a little bit later, once I get into the shopping, and which is another pros in restaurants and etc. So, diversity was great. The actual amount of people that I saw and walking around in the street, yeah, it was okay. It wasn't as vibrant as I thought it would be, but it was still a cool little city. The vibe I got was pretty nice. So that was really, really good. Next topic I'll touch on are the food and restaurants. Restaurants, as I mentioned, just sheer diversity, people bringing in their food. They want to eat the food of home and etc. It was lots of options from restaurants, cafes, Japanese, Portuguese restaurants, of course. I also found the Lebanese, that's right, Lebanese, Egyptian restaurants, Italian, as I mentioned, Japanese. So you have your slew of options when it comes to restaurants and food. So that was really nice, to have that many options and can kind of, check out a bunch of different places. And so, that was definitely a pro in my book. Next, I would say is shopping. Like I mentioned before, when you come, into the Silver Coast, you would need to eventually go into Caldas, or one of the bigger cities. If you're a little further up, you'll go, going to Liera. But if you're below Nazaré, you most likely have to drive into Caldas to get something, of substance. So they have, all the big grocery chains, or Intermarché. They have a Pinco Doce. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. And then they also have Lidl, Continent, Auchan. They also have a big shopping plaza called La Vie. Now, I caveat that with saying that the shopping plaza, the shopping mall, is a smaller size shopping mall by American standards. It's really cool that they have, pretty much everything. They have electronics store, shoes, clothing stores. They have a little food court all the way up to the top. They even had a movie theater. So it was a legit shopping mall, which is really cool because I think that's the only time I saw one in that area. So, that was really nice. And then they also have home goods stores, Leclerc, I think it's a French chain, and then also Leroy Merlin. So you can get all your home goods from there, building supplies, whatever, home renovation, everything is there. So from a shopping standpoint, it's a legit place to just, find everything you need, and, could be a pro for a lot of people because everything's already there. They don't have to drive 20, 30 minutes to come into Caldas to get things that they need for their home. Next thing, activities. What is there to do? Parks and etc. And I can talk ad nauseum of, this one park. It was called Park Don Carlos First. Beautiful park, downtown in the right off the downtown center square. Maybe 5-minute walk from there. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I saw kids and families running around this massive park. It was really cool. I spent maybe an hour there just hanging out. It was really nice. It was just a really cool park, and then also the square. I actually made it in time to see the oldest market, or fruit and vegetable market in all of Europe, continuously. It was winter time, so the supply and options weren't that great, but it was just kind of cool to check it out. And they had Portuguese pastries and sugar, like sugar pastries and stuff like that. So that was really cool to see the oldest continuous market in all of Europe. So that was dope. That was dope. And I'll also touch on that park a little bit later, because to me that was also, one of the cons. But I'll get into that a little bit later. Next up, schools. And I want to touch on schools for one reason. And I know a lot of, especially American families, are considering Caldas da Rainha to kind of live out their time in Portugal. So it's one of the hot spots for Americans, and I do want to touch on that. The school there is called Colegio Rainha de Leonor. I'm sure I'm butchering it, but that's the name of the school, and it's a private school. There's no like traditional international school there. You have to go further north, up into Marina Grande and the Liera area if you want an international school. But from our research, it seemed to be just as good, from a schooling perspective, making sure your American kids kind of get that, you still have that English indoctrination and learning English or along the way, but also learning Portuguese and other languages and etc. So it is a great school, and everyone seems to actually love it. So I would definitely say, if you are considering moving to Caldas da Rainha and you actually have family and kids, this may be a good spot. And I believe they even started nursery school, so it's legit. It's a really good school, and we considered it as a family as well if we end up deciding to eventually relocate to the Caldas da Rainha area. So definitely a pro for families, and for single people. I'm sure you don't care about the schools, but it's a bigger city, so you do have some activities, some restaurants, nightclub, bars, that type of thing. that you can probably check out and, you know, mingle with the singles. So I think that's kind of cool. Now, lastly, I'll get into the cons. You know, what are the things that I didn't like about Caldas da Rainha? And first I would say is that even for it being a bigger city, it was a little dead. Just a little. I mean, I expected to see more people kind of walking around. I actually went there on a Friday, on a Saturday, and a Sunday, and because I had to drive in and get some things, and it wasn't as vibrant as I thought it would be. So that was a little disappointing. I thought there would be a lot more, you know, lively activities going around the city. It was, you know, I have to look at the population again, and I'll stick it up in the, you know, in the right hand corner. But yeah, it was a little perplexing that there weren't as many people there. But you know, it was definitely had more population than the surrounding little towns and cities I had visited earlier in the week. So I will say that. But yeah, it was a little disappointing. The next thing that I was talking about as far as a con, which I don't have many, that the distance from the ocean. You know, as I mentioned before in my previous videos, I like to be close to the ocean, and that's just one of the things for me. I can't be too far from the ocean. It just grounds me. So the closest ocean is Foz, the closest beach, and I think it's like 15 minutes from the city center of Caldas da Rainha. And then you have São Martinho de Porto, which is 20 minutes away. So I mean, by American standards, it's not bad at all to be 15-20 minutes drive from the ocean. But you know, I guess it's a mini con. It's not that bad of a con, but for me, I have to be closer to the ocean, 5 minutes top. But you know, the ocean's there. You do have some options, but then you have to fight with the tourists when they come in, when it comes to actually enjoying those beaches, and especially during the high season. So that's something to also contend with. And then the last con, I guess, as I mentioned, there weren't many of them, is that, you know, I know it may be controversial me saying this, but I didn't find the city to be very pretty. Yeah, it looked a little bit run down, beat up. I know it's one of the older cities in that area, so, you know, besides Obidos, but it didn't have that nice renovated flair that I was hoping to see. There were a lot of buildings that were in complete despair, needed lots of renovation. Hell, even the park that I absolutely loved needed some work. The building that's in the park, Dom Carlos, medieval kind of look, gothic. It's absolutely beautiful, but I mean, it has broken glass, broken windows. It just looks run down. Man, if they renovated that place and turned it into like a museum or a spa or something like that, it could be amazing. I mean, it's just that cool. It's really cool. So the city needs quite a bit of cleaning up. I mean, if they can put some money that they're putting in some of those surrounding tourist towns, but in, you know, kind of push some of those tax dollars or whatever towards Caldas da Rainha, it could be an amazing spot. I mean, it has a lot going for it as far as the, you know, for families, for singles. It has a, you know, bigger city, like I mentioned. The schools are really good. Well, that private school is really good there. Now, if you want to send your kids to a public school, I heard they're pretty good, decent too. So, you know, they have some pretty good options for families and singles alike. But like I mentioned, overall, I just think it wasn't that pretty compared to some of the other cities I had saw, and you know, during my time in Portugal. So I think that's it. Like I said, there weren't a lot of cons, but I will say overall, it's a good city to consider, especially for Americans. You know, if you're looking at a place that's not too expensive compared to, you know, like Lisbon or, you know, or Setúbal, or, you know, the Algarve, where it's just really expensive just to get in from a housing perspective. And then, you know, the international schools and stuff like that that most people consider, they're quite expensive. But, you know, the private school there is really good, you know. So definitely consider that if you have families, because like I mentioned, I know a lot of Americans are actually considering Caldas da Rainha as a landing spot once they relocate to Portugal. So, you know, hopefully this is helpful to a lot of people, and you know, that are actually considering Caldas, and you kind of get the good with the bad, you know. But overall, I think it was a positive experience in Caldas, you know, my three or so days there. But anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I'll include the rest of the footage at the end of the video.